Brenden Martin in Ocala, Florida. A lot to talk about today. Do us a favor. Take your phone and take that picture with your phone of the QR code. We're live, streaming live. That's very difficult, but we do it on 8 channels of Twitter,
and if you
Facebook, and YouTube.
And if you're watching and with your phone, which 80% of you are, go to the chat room. There's a link there too, or just search it. SEC Sidelines. You're going to find us. It's we're everywhere you want to be.
Yeah, and check out all of our sponsors like Tom Martin's Body Shop. I'm telling you one thing, man. We're blessed. We're growing. Share us and like us means more than you know. Let's go ahead and get started on this Tuesday, January 6th, with Jordan Davis Hill. 247 Sports covers Georgia. Jordan, you and I were talking before the show. The message boards, the AI, the fake stories. Kirby Smart, 117 wins in 10 years. That's damn near 12 wins a season. Came up short. If you were just a neutral observer, I'm sure it was a fun game to watch, but it was tough for the losing team. Kind of your takeaways from what happened in New Orleans and what does Georgia need to do to get back into holding up that big, huge national championship trophy?
Well, good morning, guys. And I think the biggest thing, and it's something that honestly I think I didn't put enough stock into going into that game. I think 2 key injuries really hurt Georgia in that game. And first one was Gabe Harris at defensive end. Not only from the pass rush perspective, they never sacked Trinidad Chambliss, but probably more importantly, just from the setting the edge part, stopping the run. Kejuan Lacey was able to get outside again and again. And, I think we kind of took for granted how good Gabe Harris was at making sure those kind of plays didn't happen. Then on the other side of the ball, Drew Bobo at center. I thought the interior offensive line struggled in that game, but more importantly, a key moment in that game, they line up to go for it on 4th down. I think they're around their own 45, and they're not meaning to snap it. They're trying to get Ole Miss to jump off sides. You got a redshirt freshman center. Malachi Tolliver snaps the ball. You can tell by the rest of the line's reaction, they were not ready for that. Gunnar Stockton gets sacked, and that winds up 2 plays later, Ole Miss scores a touchdown. So there's that. A lot of credit's due to Ole Miss. I think this is a game you don't say, well, Georgia really choked this one away, and they had their moments. There's no doubt. But, man, Trinidad Chambliss had an incredible game. There were multiple times watching that game down in New Orleans where he's rolling, and I'm going, why is he not tucking and running? Like, he's got room. He's just going to throw a dart down the field and hit his man in stride. So there were opportunities for Georgia. They still had a chance. When they had an opportunity to score late in that game, they wound up having to kick a field goal. Crucial moment in that game. They threw for it on 3rd and goal. Incompletion, stopped the clock, gave an opportunity to Ole Miss. And, again, credit to Trinidad Chambliss and to Ole Miss. They took advantage. And now Georgia's in off-season mode. And to your question, Rob, it sounds like a cop-out, but I don't think there's a ton that's got to change. They've just got to continue, acquiring talent. They got to make sure that they reload at wide receiver, make sure Gunnar Stockton has the receivers around him going into 2026. And I know it's frustrating for Georgia fans. That's all I've heard, since Thursday night over on the Junkyard over at Dawgs 447. But this team is still a championship caliber program. They just came up a few plays short against a quarterback that, man, it's hard to say he has had a better game at Ole Miss than he had on Thursday night.
Yeah, and you look at Gunnar Stockton, going to come back next year. We talked so much on this show about continuity. Is Drew Bobo back next year?
So he is a junior. He could leave, but given the injury he had, I am expecting he'll be back for 2026.
So there, and then receivers. You brought in Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas. End of the year grade, A, B, C, D, F on them compared to what they replaced.
I would say an A, and a lot of that is Zachariah Branch doing the work. It kind of felt like Noah Thomas was he stepped up big time when Colby Young got hurt, but Colby comes back for the Sugar Bowl, and then Noah really wasn't a factor. I know he got 1 target, and he did not catch it. It looked like a play where Noah was not expecting the ball to be thrown quite as quickly as it was, but you could not have expected anything more or asked anything more of Zachariah Branch. who actually declared for the draft on Monday night. So he was fantastic. They used him in screens. They allowed him to get the ball quickly and make plays. And fascinating just to see what they go and do in the portal. I think receiver is once again a priority. Which I mean that if there's one position you can count on Georgia going into the portal and getting its receiver, they've done it several years in a row, going back to when they got Ra Thomas and Colby Young. So they put a lot of value in that. Actually, it was Ra and Dom Lovett that year, but they put a lot of value in receiver. Really interested to see where they go in the portal.
Well, when you look at Georgia's roster, I think Pete Cordelli said on our show last week, 91% of that roster was kids Georgia had recruited out of high school. And they were playing Ole Miss, 34% of their roster was kids. That's just the way Kiffin is. He doesn't really like that. Do you see that trend continuing with Georgia?
It's going to be really interesting. And I think what they will probably do, and I think you'll see it a little bit in this portal cycle, is kind of blending the two in that they're going to target guys that they recruited out of high school that decided to go elsewhere. And that's sort of been Kirby's MO. I think that he likes having guys that, they have a background with, they've got a relationship with. But I am really interested just to see how this portal cycle shakes out. At this point with Georgia, I think they've only had 7 players go in the portal. I'm expecting more than that. I mean, there will be double-digit numbers, and it's not because of anything outrageous. It's just you got backups. You got guys that know, what their role is going to be. And I think even, too, what will become clearer is, as they go add guys in the portal, if they go add a receiver, there's probably going to be a receiver on Georgia's team that goes, well, that guy's probably taking the starting job, and I should probably move on, too. But, no, I think that Georgia – where they've gotten putting so much into the high school recruiting, I don't think that's going to change. Now, Georgia, I thought last year I think they wound up signing 9 transfer portal guys, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that'll be about what you see every year, right around double digits, but we're not going to see them go and get 25, 30 guys. I think that they're very happy with how they've gone through recruiting in high school. They really rely on that, and then they go supplement it by getting some key guys out of the portal.
And kind of a strange take, but high school recruiting, Georgia is the 4th most talent-rich state in America. About 250 D1 players a year come out of there. Anything they might do in February which is kind of just an afterthought now from the December signing period? Any new high school kids they're after?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. It's gotten to where it's like 1 or 2 high school guys are even on the radar by February. So at this point, I don't expect so. I guess the only thing that could happen, we got to pay attention to this NFL coaching cycle from the standpoint of if a head coach from another school leaves, does a kid reopen his recruitment and wind up being an option for Georgia? But at this point, not expecting anything. I think Georgia's high school guys are locked up. The only thing that I think would change that is if you see another college head coach wind up leaving his job.
Yeah, and you look at the staff for Georgia. How much turnover do you expect to see?
The big question right now is going to be at defensive backs coach. Will Muschamp left. He had just been an analyst at Georgia and really hadn't played a very big role this year, but he takes an opportunity at Texas. So everybody's watching Travaris Robinson, a guy that's kind of been Will's right-hand man. There was talk, rumors right around when Will left that, hey, T-Rob will go with him. Nothing's happened so far, and from what we've heard behind the scenes, T-Rob is still recruiting for Georgia. Other than that, not really expecting much. I mean, I think the only thing you just have to pay attention to some of the older coaches on the staff if they were to retire. But at this point, I haven't heard anything about that. So T-Rob's really the main guy I'm watching. Does he want to stay at Georgia? Does he follow Will Muschamp to Texas? Like I said, there was some rumors about that when Will took the job, but so far T-Rob is still working for Georgia, and I think he's going to do his best to try to help them put this portal class together.
Offensive line play is it's so difficult now because of the lack of continuity. Guys are coming and going. Probably takes 2 years to develop an offensive line unit. What kind of grade would you give the Big Red Wall this year?
I'd probably give them a B+. I think that for the most part, they definitely took a huge step forward from last year, which was a struggle. I mean, I'd probably put it around a C- for 2024. It just did not live up to expectations. I thought they did really well this year. Now, there were times they struggled to run the football, but for the most part, they did a good job of keeping Gunnar Stockton upright. And the biggest thing I wrote about this in the lead up to the Sugar Bowl. They had a true freshman right guard who started, and then Juan Gaston, another true freshman. He started at the beginning of the year and then kind of became a reserve, but kind of that next guy off the bench among the 5 starting offensive line. So I talked to Stacey Searles for a few minutes at Sugar Bowl Media Day about that, and he pointed out some guys. Trying to remember some of the names: Trenton Sturdivant, Cordy Glenn, some of the guys he coached back in the late 2000s at Georgia that were freshmen that played. But he said, you'll get some young guys in the mix every now and then, but he really lauded the work those guys did, especially Dontrell Glover. Guys, he was someone who didn't get to Georgia until the summer, but he really talked highly, Stacey did, of Dontrell's approach, but also pointed to him playing at Langston Hughes High School, which has become a powerhouse in Georgia. And he said, look, his coaches and the way they prepared him got him ready to come to Georgia and play right away. He was very impressed there. Very bright future for Dontrell Glover as well as Juan Gaston going into their second years.
Yeah, and you look at the defensive line. We talked about in the preseason, you're so good at laying the groundwork and kind of you're a planner, almost like an engineer, architect. But you talked about the youth on the defensive line. How did that end up, in your opinion, working in your favor, or was it a detraction?
Well, I think it was a situation that got complicated once Gabe Harris got hurt because, again, a big part of that loss against Ole Miss was that they struggled to really create pressure and to stopping Keyjuan Lacey at the first level. I thought that they had issues getting to Keyjuan and keeping him from really making big plays, even if it was 5, 6, 7-yard runs. But I thought on the whole, I think there's a lot to be excited about. It starts with Elijah Griffin, defensive tackle, true freshman. Was not a starter, but played a whole heck of a lot, especially down the stretch. Former 5-star kid out of Savannah. You're going to hear more from him. And, they got big shoes to fill. And I'd probably look at Elijah to be that guy to do it. With Christian Miller declaring for the NFL draft, that was not a surprise. A redshirt junior, 4 years at Georgia. It was pretty much assumed he was done at Georgia, and he had done a great job. But bringing him back, you expect to have Jordan Hall back, who got hurt in that game against Florida back in November. Having those guys, getting other guys to come along like Nnamdi Ogboko, some of the younger defensive linemen, Joseph Jonah and Janye, who stepped up with Gabe Harris unavailable. So I think they feel good about where they're at on the defensive line. It wouldn't shock me if they try to go add 1 or 2 from the portal, but that's mainly because you talk about depth, you talk about positions where you want as many bodies as possible. Kirby always looks at both lines of scrimmage. So just pay attention. I haven't heard any names on defensive line, but I know they love having as many bodies available there as they can get.
And they've always had a lot of running backs. Nate Frazier, at the end of the season, was running like a wild man turned loose. I mean, he was just so much fun to watch. Who's behind him?
It'll be interesting to see if everybody stays. They lose Josh McCray and Cash Jones. They're out of eligibility, but Chauncey Bowen's played a pretty good bit. Behind them, Bo Walker flashes, but didn't play a ton. And looking at, high school with Jay Lamar, they got coming in from Colquitt County, that will be helpful. So I think they feel pretty good about their room right now. They did lose Roderick Robinson to the portal. Again, not a surprise to see that. He was a guy that Josh McCray basically supplanted in the depth chart. So it'll be interesting to watch and see what happens with the running back. I think they feel good if they can keep everybody that is in the room, as long as nobody portals. But I think they like what they got, and I think they could go add another person. I don't know who that is. I was looking at Hollywood Smothers as a potential option from NC State, but he committed to Alabama on Monday night. So I would take a look at running back, but can't say for sure that they will add to that position from the world.
Is it true that the folks at Webster's Dictionary are rethinking what the word commitment means now?
Well, it really gets me. We saw this last night. I think it was the Notre Dame kid that committed to Nebraska and then flipped to Kentucky. I really lose
the quarterback.
I don't think about the fact that a portal guy could flip his commitment, but Georgia saw it a couple years ago when Jaden Mayava, who had been at UNLV, I guess that was last year. It all just kind of runs together.
Yeah,
he committed to Georgia for about a day. And then he flipped his commitment from USC. The real shame of it, Rob, I wrote a breakdown of his game, and I was like, man, that was one of the better evaluations I feel like I did. Like 8 hours later, he had flipped to USC. So you never know. You got to be ready for anything. I know that much.
You do. Before you go, Georgia basketball got to win multiple overtimes against Auburn. Mike White's getting that thing going. The court looks different. Got the big dog out there on the court. You like that?
And it doesn't look as good on TV as I think it looks in person. But yeah, they. I don't know if me and Brenden will be talking much after tonight's game because that's going to be. I think Florida's like a 9.5-point favorite, which I think honestly it makes sense to me because Georgia's biggest weakness is rebounding the basketball, and Florida's probably greatest strength is rebounding the basketball. So they want to prove themselves. I was impressed by what they did against Auburn and holding off. I mean, Tahad Pettiford, 25 points. They get him to foul out late in regulation. I thought that made the difference. But yeah, 13-1, great start. I think they're kind of playing with house money in this trip to Gainesville. If they can shoot lights out and hit some more three-pointers, maybe they got a shot. But I think Florida's got a real chance to serve them some humble pie because I don't know that they're going to be able to battle on the boards like Florida can.
Yeah, I mean, rebounding is everything. All right, anything before you go, Georgia fans, let them know first off how they can follow you, keep up with the Junkyard Dog podcast. You're putting out content, not just that podcast, it's constant on Twitter, folks. It's a rolling newspaper. Jordan Davis Hill is like a hawk watching a mouse hole. If it's got to do with Georgia, it's going to be there. But any stories that maybe people should be paying attention to, you'll be focusing on.
I think the biggest thing is just following the portal. Georgia's got some visitors coming in. I'll tease. There's a couple of wide receivers I'm paying close attention to for Georgia. And I would say go to dogs247.com. You can learn who those guys are and keep an eye out there. Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs247. Junkyard Dogcast will be recording a live podcast 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time. And hey, I'll shout out over on the Auburn side, my old coworker Justin Lee just started a website, the Auburn Torch. He is covering Auburn Olympic sports, does a great job. Worked with me at the Opelika Auburn News for years and years. So gymnastics, golf, all the Olympic sports. Justin Lee's got that covered. Tennis as well. Want to shout them out. He just got that started on Monday. And I think Auburn fans, if you're listening to this, check it out. It's going to be a really cool venture.
I'm going to check it out right after the show. Thanks for mentioning it. Jordan, as always, thanks more than you know. Happy New Year for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
You bet. Kevin Scarbinsky joins us right now. Kevin, look, one of my buddies in the club, Jimmy Calhoun in my hunting club, his wife moved here when she was little from Poland, and I get them farm fresh eggs from the Eggman all the time. So Jimmy left me a 6-pack of this beer the other day. It's a Polish beer. I mean, it looks like it's about 10% alcohol. But how do you pronounce that?
I knew you were going to ask me that, Rob. I have absolutely no idea. I have a scarf hanging over there in my office from a good friend of mine who was in the military, brought it back from Poland. It's a red and white. Those are the Polish national colors hanging over there. I can't pronounce the words on that one either.
Well, I used to talk to Father Herbert at St. Michael's in Auburn. The guy was born in 1986 after a million people locked arms around the border of Poland. Incredible priest, as was Monsignor Skanecki, my pledge brother Scott's older brother there. So anyway, thank you so much for taking time to join us. Folks, do yourself a favor. Work your brain out. Watch Scarbo Knows podcast on this channel. Brenden said it best. He goes, Kevin is so prepared. He's got everything written and put out, but you put out 35 to 40-minute podcasts. I watch every one of them. You either watch them live or right thereafter, but it's great content. Scarbo Knows, also the Birmingham News, one of the best sports writers in the country, and also the only U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Fame writer ever from the state of Alabama. That is a big deal. Kevin, you've been watching a lot of football. Hold on. Someone else just transferred from Auburn. That's now what, 73? What's going on down there? Rome burned while Nero fiddled.
Well, Alex Golesh apparently is trying to implement the Curt Cignetti plan in bringing his entire half of his team with him from his previous stop. The only problem with that is that Curt Cignetti and James Madison had much more success than Alex Golesh in South Florida.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that blueprint will work in this case or in any case. Look, if it were that easy for a new coach to bring in players who were familiar with him, not just his style, but his culture. And that is important. It's harder than ever, I think, to establish culture for new coaches because of the portal, because of player movement, player compensation. But if it were that easy to do what Curt Cignetti has done, someone would have done it before.
Yeah.
But no one has done it the way he's done it. No one may ever do it the way that he's done it. And this year is going to be wait and see for Alex Golesh. I don't think you can make any definitive conclusion that he's going to be a smashing success at Auburn. He's going to be a rousing failure at Auburn. You just don't know. And I think that's the case with most new coaches. There are very few slam dunks in coaching hires. I don't know that anyone would have said Curt Cignetti was a slam dunk when Indiana hired him. And I can guarantee you, not Mark Cuban, not the most passionate, not the late Bobby Knight, the most passionate Indiana person of all time could not have foreseen what Indiana has done under Curt Cignetti. It has been historic.
Correct.
And we make, when this is all over, we always thought, I think most people would agree with this, that the most Nick Saban-like branch of his coaching tree was Kirby Smart. Mm-hmm. But now I'm starting to wonder. When you watch Curt Cignetti, you watch the facial expressions, you watch the scowl, you watch the look on his face, regardless of what's happening on the field, good or bad, he looks like the world's about to end or he's about to strangle somebody and end their world. It just very much reminds me of Saban, very businesslike, the way he approaches his team. His team doesn't engage in a lot of extracurricular nonsense. Yeah. They have fun and they celebrate, but not overly so. They're not over the top. They look like they expect to do what they did to teams like Alabama. Yeah. And I think that's part of the recipe of his culture and part of a culture that you can sustain as much as that's possible nowadays.
Well, and it was a lazy pick on my part. I initially thought, Indiana will win. Then I got caught up in Alabama's going back 100 years ago. We know what happened, 20-19 over Washington. You get caught in nostalgia, and you say Alabama will have this extra fire in their stomach, in their belly to fight. And they got punched and did not punch back. I mean, it was a WWE curb stomping beating. I mean, there was nothing when you grade the film, the tape, that you could find to hang your hat on. So my question is, you've got arguably the most talented roster in college football at Alabama or Georgia, even better than Ohio State, in my opinion. And you've lost 4 games 2 years in a row. What does that portend for the future of Kalen DeBoer?
There are a lot of question marks. I think people who may have believed that he was the right guy to follow Nick Saban are not questioning that. I don't know that people have necessarily, some people have, some of the more radical fans who blow with the wind, they've jumped off the bandwagon. They jumped on and off it this year. And that's the problem. Part of the issue is he's given fans of Alabama reasons to believe and then reasons to doubt in very short order. It looked like they had rebounded from the Florida State loss. They won 10 of the next 11, and the one they shouldn't have lost. They outplayed Oklahoma. They just turned the ball over a bunch in Tuscaloosa. Then they don't even show up against Georgia, and they were beaten up. They were battered. We'll give them a little grace on that, but they got run by Georgia in the SEC championship game. They bounce back. They get a little healthier, and they beat Oklahoma on the road and survive an avalanche in a very difficult environment. And you think, okay, well, now they've got it together. Now we're going to see the real Alabama, and whoo boy. If that was the real Alabama, Kalen DeBoer might want to start looking for another job. Yeah, I don't think that's the real Alabama. I think Indiana is that good. But when you don't put up a fight, and as that game wore on, it looked to me, I always am I'm very slow to say a team quit. I think that's a hard evaluation to make from the outside because quitting has more to do with what's inside than what's outside.
Yep.
And so, but man, it sure looked like it in that second half. It looked like Alabama got to a point where they realized we can't beat these guys.
Yep.
We can't go for it on 4th and 1 and run the ball straight ahead between the tackles. We've got to run a jet motion pop pass to try to convert on 4th and 1. I'm not sure which was worse in that case at the end of the first quarter. Kalen DeBoer's decision to go for it or the call that they used to go for it, neither of which worked, of course. And meanwhile, Indiana's running between the tackles. They're gashing them for 5, 8, 10, 12 yards a carry. ended up over 200 yards rushing, and Alabama demonstrated once again they just could not run the ball. You cannot win. You can have the most sophisticated, beautiful passing game known to man, but if you can't line up on 4th and 1 and power your way forward for a yard with an offensive line that averages, 330 pounds across the front,
Yep.
you got some issues. And Alabama got some issues.
Well, as the man from Richmond Academy in Blythe, Georgia used to say, ain't man enough. That's the problem. And I'm telling you, if you're not lining up, going head-to-head, offensive and defensive lines in practice, at some point, for a big chunk of your practice every day, you lose that physical mentality. Now, question for you as a True Grit journalist, the Masters, is the word or term, phrase, physicality a real word? I'm getting so many people texting me going, they'll just say the weather forecast today calls for partly cloudy with a 60% chance of showers and physicality. It's become part of the nomenclature. What is it, Kevin?
I'm proud that you use the word nomenclature, especially before 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm impressed, Rob. Physicality is a football word. Just like one of my fingernails on a blackboard moments is the word resiliency.
Oh.
Stop at resilience. We don't need the E. We don't need the Y at the end. Resilience. When did resilience morph into resiliency? And every football coach in America and a lot of basketball coaches loves the word resiliency.
Yes.
Stop. Resilience. Right there. We don't need another syllable.
They get caught on words. And
Yes.
I track them in press conferences. I'll be like, how many times have you said this word or that word? Because it's like they loop. Because, obviously they're speaking to people all day long. But I agree. The lexicon of the vocabulary words in the lexicon of some of the coaches is a bit redundant.
Yes.
They need their own dictionary.
Yes.
Yes.
The coach speak dictionary. Yes. Coach Speak 101.
Well, here's the one.
We know what they mean.
Encyclopedia of Southern Culture.
There you go.
Oh my God.
That may be one and the same.
It is a thick book. But you know what, Kevin? The thing, and Brendan's right, you go to press conferences, coaches, they get asked questions, and you love the ones that are honest. You talked about Curt Cignetti. There's something about people from the Warehouse District in Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Monongah. You're from Pennsylvania. They're great because there's a toughness to them. And Curt Cignetti, Kirby Smart's, boy, is he an alpha male. Dan Lanning, wow. I like Pete Golding. I want to ask you about and the coaching tree. We know all four were with Nick Saban at one time, but Golding and Cignetti, maybe not, they didn't leave on the best of terms, but hey, man, sometimes when you leave, they're mad at you for leaving. And people thought, why would Cignetti take a job at IUPU? Well, it was better than where he was, he felt, and it's worked out for him. But I want to ask you what you know about Pete Golding, because I have friends that live in Tuscaloosa that told me that it was pretty rough on him, and his kids being there. It's just part of it. But he's only 41 years old, from Hammond, Louisiana, went to Delta State, home of, Kevin, I'll buy you a steamer pack of crystals if you can tell me the nickname of Delta State. The Fighting
Statesman.
The Fighting Okra. The Fighting Okra.
What?
Well, they're the Statesmen.
Wait a minute.
Come on.
I've never heard in all my days. I've never heard that.
Kevin,
I'm going to the judges on that one. I do not believe that.
It is the Fighting Okra, and they've got the best T-shirts and hoodies. It's an okra with his dukes up like this. I'm not kidding you, from Cleveland, Mississippi, which is also the birthplace of Steve Spurrier's first quarterback, Shane Matthews. He's from Cleveland, Mississippi, before he moved to Pascagoula in high school when his dad got the coaching job down there. But anyway, what do you know about Pete Golding? What is your opinion of him?
Well, first of all, how about the complete home makeover they did on his haircut after he got the job? Because he always looked like the Shaggy Dog.
Shaggy DA.
There you go. The Shaggy DA on the
Brad
sideline.
McMurray.
Yeah, at practice. Look, part of Pete Golding's problem at Alabama was he wasn't Jeremy Pruitt. He wasn't Kirby Smart, who were two of the best defensive coordinators of the modern era.
Yeah.
But he also was defensive coordinator when Nick Saban fully committed to the passing game, to Jalen Hurts, and then Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones and Bryce Young. He went away from people have forgotten this too. People have very short memories. Alabama was slipping under Nick Saban after the 2020 championship, and that year was so bizarre with COVID.
Yeah.
Games played in front of mostly empty stadiums. A lot of teams didn't have their full complement of players. Nick Saban even missed a game, the Iron Bowl, that year because he had COVID, and Sark had to take over for one game.
Can you imagine Nick Saban with COVID? That was a visual.
Put your mask
visual
on,
of Nick
Coach.
Saban with the mask. Well, if you remember,
my mask.
the visuals of Nick Saban wearing the mask, which he did.
They did.
And he looked much better in it than, say, Jeremy Pruitt with his whatever that thing was. He wore it, covered his whole face.
Baklava.
That's it. I should know that word. With a Lithuanian background as well as Polish.
Yeah.
All right.
Pete Golding, I'm impressed by Pete Golding, and he won't get the full credit for this. And look, he didn't build this team by himself. He didn't develop this team. We have to, as much as I dislike Lane Kiffin and think very lowly of him, he built the team. However, what Pete Golding has done in shepherding this team through this storm and dealing with all the outside nonsense and noise that's come along with it to win 2 playoff games has been very, very impressive to keep that team together. Now, this doesn't mean that Pete Golding is going to be one of the better coaches in the SEC or the country, that he's going to have Ole Miss in contention year in and year out. We just don't know. Just like with Alex Golesh at Auburn, we just don't know because he hasn't done it before.
Yeah.
But he has handled this assignment. He gets an A+++ at this point for the way he's handled this. With all the back and forth, you've got assistants with one foot in Baton Rouge, one in Oxford, and these are very important parts of the puzzle. These guys, Charlie Weiss Jr. calling plays, and yet it's worked. And in some cases, he outcoached Kirby Smart in that game. It was primarily Trinidad Chambliss having an epic legacy game.
Yeah,
and he's the wild card. He can do that. If he does that, 2 more times, they'll win the national championship.
I'll tell you what, when you look at Charlie Weiss Jr. and Brenden, if you could do this, if you could juxtapose the 2 photographs of Charlie Weiss Jr. and Mark Wahlberg, I mean, they look just a lot. I mean, I'm like, is that Mark Wahlberg out there? Guy's got arms the size of tree trunks. But anyway, you think about, and it's a diametrically opposing argument that can be made. Offensive line play is awful because of all the lack of continuity, essentially. Defensive line play is better in a lot of cases, but they're going against weaker offensive lines. Is that a true assessment, or am I wrong?
No, I think that's an excellent judgment, because if there's one position on the football team where you need cohesion and understanding what the guy next to you is going to do, whether the defensive line does this or does that, you zig, do you zag, you've got to have a cohesion in that group more so than any other position on the field. And it's harder than ever to do that, as you pointed out, Rob, because of the portal, because guys are coming and going. Meanwhile, just outstanding rush ends like Reuben Bain from Miami.
Cool.
You just turn those guys loose. Now, there is a method to the madness. You have twists and loops, and you line guys up in different places, and you make it difficult for the O-line to figure out where these guys are coming from, where's the pressure coming from. I think pressure packages are more sophisticated than ever. And meanwhile, like you said, offensive lines are less cohesive than ever. So it's really become a mismatch in many ways up front. That's why those are the 2. You could spend all the money in the world you want on wide receivers in the portal.
Yeah.
I can walk out my door and drive within 30 minutes, and I can find guys that are 5'8", 175 pounds, that can run like the wind. I can find a bunch of them. I can't find 6'2", 300-pounders who can be run stuffers in the middle of the defensive line. Yeah. I can't find that 6'5", 265-pound guy who can chase down running backs and come off the edge and terrorize quarterbacks. Those guys are harder to find. So it's advantage defense in that way. That's why you have to be able to, message Kalen DeBoer, run the dang ball, because you got to slow down those guys. And if you don't, what's going to happen to your quarterback is what happened to Ty Simpson far too often during the season. That's why he ended up with a cracked rib against Indiana, because he had to escape the pocket and he got just hammered by probably the smallest guy on Indiana's defense, the DB who really just laid him out and broke his rib and sent him out of the game. But that's why, it's advantage defense. That's why you've got to have a quarterback, I think, that can create. And Ole Miss has a better quarterback in that sense. Not saying he's better A to Z than Fernando Mendoza, for example. But in terms of being creative, some of those plays he made against Georgia, I mean, he's running for his life and he's flipping backhand passes before he gets to the sideline, and you can't scheme against that.
No,
you can't.
All right, I'm gonna throw some comments at you from our viewers. I love this. I remember when Saban was against the hurry up offense because of player safety. Kelly Leak, at least that's what he said. One Stone Angel, love this guy. Prayers for you, fighting cancer. I love you, man. You watch this show every day. You watch every show on this channel. One Stone Angel, I would like to see Ole Miss go all the way. Kelly Leak, yes, Ole Miss all the way. I like this. Rob Anderson, Alabama assistant coaches must live in the coal mines. Thank you, Stone Angel, another great show. It's great because we got the best producer and the best guest and the best audience. Also, Kevin, the most often repeated quote that I've passed along to people over Christmas and New Year's is, have you heard what Kevin Scarbinsky said about Ryan McGee? He's a great journalist. Got a lot of respect for him. He's outstanding. But boy, was he used by Lane Kiffin on that Netflix, about how he's turned his life around. Zebras don't change their stripes. They just change their watering holes. That's Lane Kiffin, isn't it? I was at the zoo, by the way, yesterday with my daughter and grandson, and I saw the zebras, and one of them's name was Lane. I'm kidding.
Wasn't it, karma's a real thing. I fully believe that. And wasn't it delicious on New Year's night while Ole Miss, I mean New York strip delicious. I made some on the grill last night.
Salacious.
You're a strip guy.
Oh, yeah. On New Year's night in New Orleans, Louisiana, the Ole Miss football team is beating Kirby Smart and Georgia in a playoff game. Meanwhile, an hour or so to the west in Baton Rouge, Lane Kiffin is making an ostentatious entrance into the PMAC alongside Kim Mulkey, another really lovable character.
Yeah.
Before the game, as LSU's women's basketball team is starting its SEC schedule against Kentucky, and they lose on a buzzer beater to the Kentucky Wildcats. And wasn't that sweet?
Yes.
I mean, that was just, like I said, karma is it's a word I don't want to say on the.
It's a witch. It's a witch.
It's a bitch.
Yeah.
There you go.
Get your brooms ready.
Brenden doesn't mind saying it. Brenden will say it.
I don't care. I don't care what anyone thinks about me.
Yes.
Kevin,
I actually did tweet the B word. I tweeted it that night. That one got a lot of that one got a lot of engagement. And let me tell you the tweet that went viral. And you guys know I love the live tweet games.
Yeah.
This is a true fact. Although Texas fans some of them don't know how to read or count, and I had to school them in both cases. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are the only SEC coaches who have more playoff wins than Pete Golding. Think about that for a second.
Wow.
Now, and people, I can't tell you how many Texas fans came back at me and said, what about Sark? What about Sark? What about Sark? What about Sark? Sark has 2 playoff wins at Texas. They both came last year. 2 is equal to 2. 2 is not more than 2. Nick Saban has 9. There it is. You were right.
I told you.
We got. I know not to doubt Rob when it comes to Southern culture.
No,
and all of these.
But Kevin, I'm going to tell you what.
With it.
Kevin, you're so. It's so cool to get into words like physicality, and then you get into what is being said. So much. I look at so much stuff online, the punctuation, the lack thereof. I mean, we had a typing teacher at Christian Brothers High School named Brother John Michael. The man was at least 7 feet tall, 400 pounds, and he wore the black robe with the white collar, Lasallian Brothers. And in typing class, he would walk around like the penguin. He was ginormous. He'd block out the sun, and he would say, "Don't look at the keys." Then if you did it again, he'd say, "Don't look at the keys, you jackass. Don't look at the keys." But next thing you know, you're grabbed by your hair out of the I've learned how to type that way. Also learned punctuation.
Under duress.
This is explaining a lot, Rob.
Yeah, under duress. Brother John, he taught my dad, who graduated in 1947. And so anyway, what I was going to say is that when I text someone, I indent 5 spaces to the right. It is so ingrained in my head.
5.
And when you're counting
5 pieces?
numbers, the first
That's
9
old
numbers.
school.
Yeah,
That is
first,
old school.
That is
Yeah.
old school, dude.
but the first 9 numbers, like 1 through 9, you spell it out. Until you get the number 10, do you put the digits? I learned that, brother.
Amen,
Stephen,
brother.
Brother
Wait a
Stephen
minute.
Schonhoff in Word Wealth. And if you didn't do it right, you wrote a 5,000 word theme on why that mattered. Damn, that was awful. I had to do 2 of them.
Now the space after the period is not even, that's going away now too, Kevin, which I see a lot of younger people just going, even the AIs are losing the space after the period. Rob, I need to ask you, are those your glasses or are those Audrey's?
These are Mildred's. I
Rob
broke them.
Browne, everybody, wearing his
Yeah.
wife's glasses. Here it
Hold
is.
on, wait, no.
Robert Browne. Good God, Rob. Those aren't better. Those look like you got them on TikTok.
Audrey ordered me. Look,
Those are Audrey's.
she ordered these glasses from this place. I don't know.
Those are both Audrey's glasses.
I don't know.
I mean, can we talk about
That was not an improvement from
I don't think-
from
I don't think that-
choice
I don't-
A to choice B.
I don't think that is, and I'm just saying it. Okra is a fighting.
I'm going Ray Charles on y'all, man.
Fighting Okra, right?
There you go.
Yeah, you know that's a
much
lot
better.
more. That's
Much
actually
better.
better. I feel a
Much
little,
better.
I'm gonna
That's-
have to work on these. Hey, y'all,
that's freaking me out.
they're awful. I'm gonna get some new ones today. Look, Brad Logan's gonna join us in a minute, and Kevin, stay on with us. He's Logan Media Network. Brad, they do a great show every Saturday, Football Saturday in Oxford in the Grove by the planetarium, like an ESPN game day set. And Brad really knows Ole Miss. He's going to be on with us. Yancey will check in later in the week. He's going to be on his way to Tempe for the Ole Miss game against Miami. And Kevin, you look at right now, the SEC's last hope is Ole Miss. At 5 teams started. You know, that game is Thursday night. We're down to the final 4. And Ole Miss looks like Trinidad Chambliss. Do we know? I mean, Brad will know this, but is he coming back? If he does, I think he's staying at Ole Miss. I don't think he's going. I think the Ole Miss players are really angry with Lane Kiffin.
Oh well, they've a lot of them have made that clear. I hope he gets another year. Look, and so many of these appeals have been granted.
Yeah,
it would be hard to imagine that this one wouldn't be. And I think the thing that most college football fans who don't have a dog in the hunt would say they would love to see him stay at Ole Miss. And the last thing they would like to see him do is go to Baton Rouge and join Lane Kiffin there.
Yeah,
I think that would be,
But
to
that's
me,
what
that
they
would be
all
the
wanna
best
do.
outcome. The best outcome would be for him to stay at, I think, would be for him to stay at Ole Miss. That's what we would all love to see. And then to see him quarterback against Lane Kiffin when they meet next season.
well,
That's
think
like
about
going around all over the place too. Like everybody wants to see a little red ass on Lane Kiffin. I mean,
Yes.
that's for sure. I'm just saying.
Yes.
you know,
He's
like-
public enemy number 1 in the college football world.
Yeah,
for
look,
sure.
if you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago if DJ Lagway would have been entertaining thoughts to talk to Lane Kiffin, I would have told you were crazy. He's too loyal. He's a Gator for life. Blah 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 blah. And now I think everyone's as loyal until the next phone call, and then they're like, "Yeah, we hate Lane Kiffin until he calls us and go play for LSU."
Yeah. By the way, Kevin, Byron Browne, it looks like the South Florida quarterback is going to sign with Auburn for above minimum wage. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe he's going to attract people. Cam Coleman, is he going to Ohio State? I mean, who's 32 guys in the portal right now? Of course, they can come out of the portal knowing who the quarterback's going to be, can't they?
Well, that's a key if you're a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, Eric Singleton, Cam Coleman, the whole wide receiver room for Auburn last year, they miscalculated wildly that the quarterback position would be at least competent, and it wasn't, at least until later in the season. Deuce Knight did some good. Not Deuce Knight. Ashton Daniels did some nice things. Well, Deuce Knight did some nice things against Mercer. It was Mercer.
Yes.
But, you know, if you choose if you're a wide receiver, you choose a program with the wrong quarterback, you're going to have a miserable year, as Auburn's very good receiver room the last couple of years has experienced. But like I said, I think too much emphasis is being placed on these wide receivers. Yes, you can find a difference maker, but for as good as Cam Coleman was and some of the spectacular highlight reel plays he made, Auburn won 5 football games.
Yeah.
He was not a difference maker in terms of the bottom line, the win-loss record. Yeah. Quarterbacks are difference makers, offensive linemen and defensive linemen. That's got to be your priority, those three positions.
No, I totally agree. This culture, Hugh Freeze may go down as the worst coach in Auburn history. Earl Browne was bad.
Brian Harsin, Hugh Freeze.
But Brian Harsin had a victory against a decent team. He beat a good Ole Miss team in 21. He had some actual legitimate. Hugh Freeze did not have a single signature victory in 3 years. Well, he didn't make it 3 years. And the thing that got him, I said, was no Auburn coach since 1981, beginning with Pat Dye, won fewer than 8 games in his second year and survived to tell about it. Brian Harsin did not make it a full 2 years. Mercifully, I mean, it had to end. Hugh Freeze, I think they fired him in the shower after the Kentucky loss. The last time Auburn lost at Kentucky was 1966. But they've lost now. In the last 6 years, Auburn has lost twice to South Carolina. Every time they've played Vanderbilt. You're talking about some rough times back to Ole Miss. That's never happened in history. Something's got to change. And as far as the culture, if these players at Auburn that are there right now want to put themselves on a pedestal, they have been a part of nothing. The most dysfunctional coaching staff I've ever seen at Auburn. Clueless. They don't know come here from Sikkim when it comes to winning college football. And they've got a completely clean house. And I think Golish is like the new manager coming into the firm. He's looking at what you're making and looking at your production and going, dude, you're making 800. We'll give you 200. You don't like it? Let me hit the portal button for you. You got to do that.
Well, again, Curt Cignetti provided a blueprint. You don't have to have a locker room full of 4 and 5 stars to win at a high level. But can you do it with guys that were okay in the American Conference? And the American Conference is a good conference. Don't get me wrong. It's not the SEC, certainly. So that's the key. Cignetti did it with guys from James Madison in the Sun Belt. The American is a better conference, top to bottom, than the Sun Belt. But Alex Golish didn't beat the better teams in the American. That's my biggest red flag with him.
Yep.
Is I forget the numbers now, 1-7 against teams that finished with a winning record in that conference. He feasted on the lesser teams in that league. He got a lot of run for beating a bad Florida team this year. In a game, if you watch the game, Brenden, you know this, South Florida didn't look all that impressive either. I mean, it was that was an ugly, sloppy game.
Really ugly.
They won it on a late field goal. If that's your measurement of how he's going to do in the SEC, I think you're a little off base.
Yeah.
I just think we don't know. And he certainly has an uphill battle because, look, Auburn is as close to the bottom of the SEC as it's been in a long time. And it is a hard climb up from where they are. And again, don't give me Indiana in the Big Ten, because as much as the SEC has, in some people's minds, been exposed this year, especially in the postseason, I don't care about the Music City Bowl in terms of a comparison of conferences.
Yeah.
It's not a valid comparison. Or the ReliaQuest Bowl or any of these non-playoff games. Yeah, the SEC is not what it used to be, but it's still top to bottom the best conference in the country. And let me say this. They are going to – we've all called for it. We've all wanted more SEC games, right? They're going to 9 next year. Greg Sankey and company may rue the day they went to 9 because you're going to have more teams suffering more injuries.
You're going to have
one
to
thing.
Allow bigger rosters because you're going to have you really are. I was thinking that you need to expand the roster then because you don't have enough guys to reload.
And that's you just hit on it, Brenden. That's the big difference. That's Nick Saban's. The guys who were backups at Alabama and Georgia are now starting at Vanderbilt and Indiana. Well, not necessarily Indiana, but teams
SMU.
like that. Well, and every SEC team and everybody who covers the league knows this. It doesn't matter if you're South Carolina and you don't have a great history. You've got great players. You've got Dylan Stewart on the edge. You've got some great players at every SEC program.
Yeah. Let's bring in Brad Logan. Brad, I know you've had a busy morning. Sports 56, WHBQ, Sirius XM, Thanks for sharing time with us, Logan Media Network. You're one of the best pros. Talked about your pregame show you do in Oxford. You know that Ole Miss program well. What's going on with Oxford? The coaching, who's staying, who they're trying to pull away. Pete Golding, he's the head coach. Charlie Weiss Jr. says he's staying all the way, but you've forgotten more than I know.
Well, the thing about it right now, thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Appreciate you joining everybody. And if you look at where the staff is right now, I think number one, you look at what Pete Golding has done. It has been, a masterclass. And I found it funny the way the end of the first half ended. Everybody came out with their pitchforks about how it was clock mismanagement, that sort of thing. Yeah. And there were some coaching malpractice there, but I think most importantly, it was Daquan Wright didn't get out of bounds. I think at the end of the game, though, the way that Ole Miss manufactured that last drive, knowing to get a little bit with Kejuan Lacey was going to dictate where they were going to go up top with the matchup that they liked with Trinidad Chambliss. And with that timeout usage at the end, forcing Georgia to get the field goal, 34-all, and then, of course, kicking the game-winning field goal after the pass when they had the matchup with the Georgia secondary. So, to me, that just stands out about how well this team is playing together as a group and how well the coaching staff is meshing together. Charlie Weiss essentially is the one that's holding the offense together. Now, there was a report yesterday that he was back in Louisiana. I think they had an Arizona State transfer quarterback, so he's recruiting there. Now, I think it's one thing to say, he's a good guy and another good coach. I think in this case, Charlie Weiss is a really good person. So I think, and I know that Pete Golding trusts Charlie Weiss, not only with the offense, but trusts him to do the right thing. And I think he shined out from under the tutelage of Lane Kiffin, having the offense all to himself. And that's one thing Pete Golding said. This is his offense. I have nothing to do with it. And Joe Judge, someone that we talked to yesterday, he's also a huge component of this offense, actually took me through the drive at the end of the game about when I explained about Lacey getting a couple yards, and they're thinking, okay, we don't need to go 3 and out because they've got a great kicker. So we need to get some yardage on first down, go up top, don't get it, run the ball. Then we can punt with if we have to punt it all with no time left. But I think the way the master class was, the way they manufactured the clock. To answer your original question, I don't know if Kevin Smith will be on staff during the game in a couple of days. I know he's kind of been back and forth. There's been reports that he's come, that he's going. There was a post on X about how, don't listen to the message boards. And I think it's a lot of nuance there. I think at the end of the day, Ole Miss has its staff in place. They've got a couple of coaches that have come in, but it's just Charlie Weiss's offense, and he's going to take this team through the national championship if that's where they go. Everybody else, Heather Dinich of ESPN asked Pete on the call the other day about, she kind of tripled down, is like, okay, so how many? And he was like, everybody's making such a big deal about these coaches. We've got millions of people in our staff, in our offices, that can handle this team over the next couple of games. Y'all are making way too much of a deal. He said, they're grown people. If they want to leave, they can leave. If they want to stay, they can stay. This is a professional organization, and I think Pete Golding has done a very good job as head coach with Lane Kiffin headed off to LSU.
Yeah, Kevin and guys, Antonio Kite, I'm thinking about him, defensive back, played at Alabama, played at Auburn, now had a hell of a game the other night for Ole Miss out of Andalusia, Alabama. Boy, that's the portal at work. Kevin, questions for Brad Logan, Logan Media Network, covers Ole Miss, again, like kudzu and cotton.
Well, I don't know Brad, but I follow him on Twitter because he puts out great information on a regular basis. And Brad, you made a great point, I think, about Charlie Weiss Jr. And what a contrast. And it's not a completely apples to apples comparison because he's going from position coach at one school to position coach at another school, coordinator. Whereas Lane Kiffin in 2016 was the Alabama offensive coordinator, and he was going to become the Florida Atlantic head coach. But you're seeing one man handle it professionally, maturely, and making sure that he gives his best to each of his two employers. And that is a complete contrast to what Lane Kiffin did in 2016 at Alabama, when Nick Saban felt compelled to make one of the most radical decisions we've ever seen a coach going to play for a national championship, firing essentially his offensive coordinator a week before the championship game. And Charlie Weiss has handled this so much better and has really, I think, gained a lot of street cred in the profession. Not that he already had a lot of that, but he's only elevated, I think, himself in the eyes of maybe future employers, people looking for a head coach down the road. I've been very impressed with what he's done, and I'm glad you pointed this out. That final, the way that Pete Golding and the staff handled the end of game against Georgia, they outcoached Kirby Smart and company.
Yeah.
There is no other conclusion to draw. And I'm just enjoying watching it.
Well, thanks for the kind words, Kevin. You're an incredible journalist, and I've enjoyed following you throughout the years. I think you look at this Ole Miss football team, and Charlie Weiss. Let's just say the apple didn't fall far from the tree. I think he learns a lot from his dad, and I think what we're seeing is a Charlie Weiss Jr. that's out from under the umbrella of Lane Kiffin, and that is no fault of Lane whatsoever. It's organically happened. How we're seeing Charlie Weiss Jr. calling some of his best football without having Lane on the other end. Hey, look, you won't find anybody that I think calls a better football game than Lane Kiffin. There are very few right now in college football that are better between the lines than Lane Kiffin. But what we're seeing right now is we didn't know. There were a lot of boxes that Pete Golding had checked at Ole Miss. He'd coached under the best. He'd coached under Saban at Alabama. Frank Wilson, who I think is a great coach, who's now on staff at UTSA. He, of course, started at Delta State. Coached with Ron Roberts, who's now the DC at Arkansas, was at Florida, played at Delta State under Rick Rhodes, came from Hammond, Louisiana, and walked on with a little bit of a scholarship to Delta State as a DB. Oh, by the way, he left Delta State as an all-conference, Gulf South Conference defensive back. And as you say, the rest is history. Worked himself all the way up, learned from the best. So we knew he had a lot of boxes checked: recruiting, defensive prowess, pretty much the accolades from every major head coach in the country. He'd done everything except one thing, and that's win a football game. He did that against Tulane, and I think the rest I don't want to say that Ole Miss got a free shot against Georgia, because I received a lot of pushback on that, because people told me, and it rightly so, I guess, that they're much more of an even playing field than I was making it out to be. I think history in Ole Miss kind of come to fruition for me. A program that's never played in Atlanta for the SEC championship game, a program that hasn't played for a national championship since the 1960s. I think recency bias played a factor in that, and we would learn that Ole Miss would play well. I think we're learning, number one, that head coach Pete Golding is learning how to win.
Yeah,
and he's doing it on a very high level. He surrounded himself with really good coaches, and I don't think coaches like Joe Judge are getting enough credit for what they're doing. Randall Joyner, the defensive line coach, Brian Browne, his acting defensive coordinator, who played at Ole Miss, as a Corinth, Mississippi native. And what we're seeing right now is Ole Miss is a team that everybody's kind of latching on to. You've got a feel-good story in Trinidad Chambliss, a former Division II quarterback that came in and spelled an Austin Simmons, who was injured earlier this year. He's played with a high level of confidence, finished 10th in the Heisman voting. It's really a Cinderella story. And, oh, by the way, I think a lot of people are hoping Ole Miss win because they have such a disdain for the way that Lane left the program. I think two things are true. Number one, I think Lane Kiffin's an incredible football coach, and he's going to win at LSU. I think Lane Kiffin is really good at calling plays in between the lines. I also think Lane Kiffin left this team horribly. He also left the college football playoff team and didn't leave them well. So I think both those things are true, and Ole Miss is in a really good position against Miami in a couple of days.
Brad, I brought this up earlier, and I was scoffed at. Delta State University in Cleveland, over in the Delta. The Fighting Okra. They're the Statesmen, but do you refer to them as the Fighting Okra? And no one believed me. How about that Fighting Okra? Pete Golding's story is a great story. And I will tell you, I thought the Diego Pavia story was a compelling story for college football throughout the season. I think what's Ole Miss kind of orphaned by their coach and how they're trying to pull it together might be the best story in college football, period.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana and Kurt Cignetti is a great story, Rob. I mean, what Indiana has done. I mean, Indiana is very similar to Ole Miss. And, in fact, I would say that Ole Miss has more recent success than Indiana. Indiana was a program that hadn't, they weren't winning games a couple of years ago. Like, they just weren't winning at all. And so to be able to see what Kurt Cignetti has done and Mendoza, the quarterback, winning the Heisman, and, listen to him just be so excited and so emotional. I mean, I think the country's kind of circling around Indiana, but I'd be remiss if I didn't think that Ole Miss is a great story too, with a Division II transfer quarterback that won a national championship, and someone that has never been to the country of Trinidad but has the name Trinidad, and the Ole Miss fans are buying up the Trinidad flags. It's a really good story, and you look at the Ole Miss defense. You got for example, you've got a linebacker in Andrew Jones that transferred from Grambling. You've got Wyatt Williams, a really good defensive back, leads the team in interceptions. He started at Delta State, then went to Monroe, and just kind of landed at Ole Miss. It's just kind of a collective group of transfer guys that have come together. And, Alabama Pete is what a lot of people call him because of how well he recruits. And I think one thing that we cannot overshadow, Kevin and Rob, is what happened yesterday. And yesterday we saw 4 players that were pre-ported to LSU. We saw 4 players that everybody talked about that was going to LSU with Lane Kiffin. What we saw yesterday is quarterback Trinidad Chambliss pending his waiver approval, running back Kewan Lacey, defensive end Princewell Amon Mielen, kicker Lucas Carnero. They all will be back at Ole Miss next year. To me, that may mean as much as beating Georgia, because next year was going to be a huge rebuilding year. No, next year's going to be a reloading year for Pete Golding and this Ole Miss football team, because that was a huge, huge deal. Walker Jones and the Grove Collective, they made a lot of hay yesterday, and that was the best recruiting day since probably 2012, whenever Ole Miss got the Kimdichie brothers and Laquan Treadwell, and then, of course, a number of high-level players from Georgia back in 12.
Yeah, and I remember when they got Denzel out of Graysonville, Georgia, Logan High School. That was huge. And then, Laramie Tunsil out of Live Oak, Florida. That was about as good as it gets. Kevin, jump back in here. Brad Logan will go a little bit long if you can. Brad Logan of Logan Media Network. Follow him. Kevin's right. I've had 3 of the best Twitter people around. Jordan Davis Hill, 247 Sports on Georgia, Kevin Scarbinsky, Scarbo Knows, and Brad Logan. Folks, follow them. You may not get a local newspaper, but if you follow these guys, you'll be ahead of the game.
I'm interested to know how Brad thinks this game is going to unfold on Thursday night. Where does Miami have an edge? Where does Ole Miss have an edge, do you think?
Yeah, great question, Kevin. I think Miami's edge are the edges on defense. They're the number 5 rushing defense in the country. We saw last week, or a couple days ago, forgive me, the days run together. The college football games being played on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Yeah. Has my calendar all messed up.
Me too.
But the previous game against Georgia, Kewan Lacey had 96 yards, and there were hard-earned yards. And I honestly think, Kevin, that Miami has a better run defense than Georgia. And I think that's kind of crazy to say. Wow. But I think Miami is so good. They're very similar to the fact that they're going to be a ground and pound team. They're going to beat you up. They're going to try to get you to the fourth quarter and make you submit. Very similar to the way Georgia did to Ole Miss on the 20th of September. But that's not the same Ole Miss defense that we saw on September 20th. And so I like Ole Miss to be able to combat that. I think Carson Beck's really good. And so we asked William Eccles, the talented defensive tackle for Ole Miss, what's the key to beating Miami? And he's like, we got to keep Carson Beck in the pocket and, put pressure on him and, flush him out of the pocket and not let him sit back there and pick us apart, because he's so good at doing that. Not maybe as good as Gunnar Stockton outside the pocket, but I do think Carson Beck can figure some things out. I think the running game for Miami is much better than Georgia. I mean, Frazier was really good for Georgia, but I think Miami has a couple of running backs that can go. Ole Miss is a defense that is, frankly, gentlemen, they've given up a lot of points. And so I think the key for me is if Ole Miss can force some field goals. I think this game's going to be in the 30s. I think Ole Miss needs to be in the high 30s to win this game. I think Miami's 28-31. If you ask me who wins, and if Ole Miss wins, I think it's Ole Miss got to score 35, 38 points, similar to the way they did against Georgia. This Miami team is very opportunistic, but I tell you, the way that Ole Miss is playing right now with Trinidad Chambliss, if the offensive line, which was a question mark early in the year, now Patrick Kudus is playing so well. He won the Ken Hull Award, which is the number 1 offensive lineman in Mississippi. Diego Pounds hasn't given up a sack, and I don't know when. And you look at Jaden Williams, they're all playing so well. And Bryson Sanders has come so far that if the Ole Miss offensive line can do as well as they did against Georgia, protect Trinidad Chambliss, I think Ole Miss has a really good shot of winning the game. I think the spread right now is 3, and Vegas really likes Miami. And I think a lot of that is because of how well Miami's defense has been playing. I mean, you can't play that well against Ohio State and not get the antennas popped up. Ohio State and Ryan Day is a really good football program. And to be able to beat Ohio State, Ole Miss has to have their antennas up. But this is not a free shot anymore. This is a situation where Ole Miss is playing lights out. There's a lot of positive momentum with the program, with those 4 players, main players, coming back for next year. So with this Ole Miss football team playing as well as they are, all the momentum, and they'll have a nice fan base out in Phoenix. and then they'll have a huge fan base in Miami if they get to the championship game. But this is an incredible run for this football team, and I think for Ole Miss to win the game, Kevin, to answer your question, they've got to score at least 35 points, and I think that's something they can do.
Yeah, that's my sense, that the higher the score, the better the chance that Ole Miss wins.
Yeah.
Because I think the way Trinidad Chambliss is playing, he is such an X factor, because some of those throws he made in the second half, off platform, improvisation, doing things that not a lot of quarterbacks can do. Carson Beck can make some plays outside of the pocket, but he can't do anywhere near some of the magic that Trinidad produced against that Georgia defense. And you can scheme him up perfectly, and he can still wreck your defense. And that he's got to have, to me, another one of those type of legacy games for Ole Miss to advance and get to the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, we talked with Joe Judge, and he made mention that Trinidad is the first one in the film room and the last one to leave, and that's no surprise. Anybody that's heard Trinidad Chambliss he just oozes confidence, and he just oozes major college football quarterback. So I think a lot of people are waiting to see what the waiver process is going to be. I mean, this has been kicked down the road so far that Ole Miss hasn't even had a chance to even recruit the portal a lot, because they need to get an answer of some sort. And so, but I'll end with this. Trinidad down the stretch, and what Joe Judge pointed out, and I asked Joe Judge about the final drive and the decision to throw the ball, throw the pass, if the coverage was there, did he check it? And so Trinidad did not check it. It was a play call from Charlie Weiss, and Joe Judge pointed out that there was a matchup. Free safety rolled over, and they had the matchup with the cornerback, the matchup they wanted. There was no over-the-top help, and Deshaun Stribling went up and made a play. And that he said that's what we do. We go make plays. And what was fascinating, too, to me is on September 20th when Kirby Smart and they won the game. Kirby said, that's how we win games. We make you submit. We put you in a position to where you don't want anymore. The crowd came up. They had beaten Ole Miss up and down the field, and here they are at the end of the game, and they beat Ole Miss, scoring 17 fourth-quarter points. This time around, Ole Miss beat Kirby at his own game. They stopped Georgia, forced the field goal, and then kicked the game-winning field goal to win, and they beat Georgia at their own game. And I think that's why I give Ole Miss at least a shot against Miami.
Well, think about this. That was Trinidad Chambliss' first ever road game start as an SEC quarterback. Prior to that, his last road game start was at Ferris State when they won the national championship. So give him credit. And I always say Georgia likes to play a full 60. Ole Miss is the same way. And those three plays in the second half by Trinidad Chambliss are as important to Ole Miss football history, in my opinion, as Walker Jones coming back from Under Armour and running the Grove Collective. I know I have a friend who told me about one guy who's given y'all now $30 million in the last 2.5 years. This Grove Collective is unbelievable. And talk about, 15,000 members. It's so impressive. The number 3 ranked accounting school in the country. You just watch those tentacles from Oxford. Half the Fortune 500 companies are run by CPAs. Talk about them. They may be the most exciting people in the world, but they know where the money is, and it's coming back to Oxford in ways you cannot imagine.
Yeah, if you remember, Austin Thomas is back from LSU, so he's back as a general manager. And you put him along with Walker Jones and the Grove Collective, and Matt McLaughlin does a great job at Ole Miss. And so that collective group has been fantastic. And I texted back and forth with Walker Jones, and among a couple of things that he said is, it was a big day. And it was a big day yesterday. And I think those days are going to continue, because that's the new world of college football, whether you like it or not. There are a lot of people who say that, you know what, I hate this. I'm not in that. Well, that's where we are. So you have to appreciate that, and you have to understand that that's the new world that we live in college football. But I think at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing I think folks need to take away from this conversation is there were boxes that Pete Golding needed to check. And right now, he's checked every one of them. The only one he hadn't checked was win a major college football playoff game. And he did that against Georgia. And it wasn't a fluke. I mean, they beat Kirby Smart. They beat the best in the business. And Kirby admitted that. Said at the end of the game, we played a road game. Ole Miss beat us. There was no flukes. There was no calls that went one way or the other. And I thought it was a big win. And it regardless of what happens against Miami, I think you can look back on this season and think, wow, what a big win over Georgia. What a huge season. Ole Miss now 12 wins. I mean, what are we talking about here? Ole Miss with 12 wins in college football and continuing to break history at Ole Miss. And it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, and living in Memphis, been to a lot of games down there. I've got so many Ole Miss friends, Brad. They're so excited, and I'm like, just keep doing what you're doing. Hey, Brad, Logan, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for staying on long with us today. Yeah. Scarbo knows. Absolutely appreciate you more than you know. Jordan Davis Hill, for executive producer Brenden Martin. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We are the most blessed people in the history of the world. Check out our sponsors like Rumble Boxing. How you fight is how you live. Hempforpros.com. They got the energy gummies, the lights out gummies, the chill gummies, and also the pain topicals, the roll-ons. They really work. I've used them. Hempforpros.com. And also, remember, Landers Ford open every day of the week except Sunday. LandersFordMemphis.com. Ask Brad Bellamy, the GM, for all your car, truck, and SUV needs and repair work. And remember, watch this channel as often as you can. Share us and like us. Good night, John Boy. We'll see you tonight.